Before we move on, can you guys just confirm that we didn't set anything up before we started recording this call, right?
Yeah, nothing.
I didn't ask you guys to think of specific cards or write anything down or do anything suspicious like that, right? Beautiful. Okay. So what I want you to do is I want you to imagine that you're holding a deck of cards, and I want you to spread through that deck in your mind, and I want you to find a card that calls out to you, the card that you are thinking of, okay? And I want you to imagine pulling that card out and holding it in front of your face and really seeing the outline of that card, the pips, the suit, the color, everything. And I want you to try and send that image to me. And I am going to spread through here. Dorothy, I'll start with you. So just think of that card. Would you go for something? No, I'm gonna go with this one, okay? And then I'll leave that out. And Zeke, now I want you to think of your card for me. Could be this or it could be... You know what? No. Final answer. I'm going with this. I'm going with this one. So just think... Oh, no. Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah, that's... Yeah, that's it. You know, somebody else actually picked this card today. So I'm wondering if maybe you guys are on the same wavelength. I'm going to go with these two right here. Dorothea, for the first time, name your card out loud.
Ace of Hearts.
The Ace of Hearts. And Gonzalo, what is the card that you were merely thinking of? 10 of Diamonds?
Yep.
1 out of 2 is pretty good, right? 1 out of 2 is good. It's a good thing I got both the Ace of Hearts and the 10 of Diamonds.
What? What?
The 6 of Spades and the 10 of Diamonds.
Very nice.
It is the 7 of Clubs. Yes, little tiny finger claps. It's what I strive for. Just this.
It's amazing.
There it is. Thank you so much.
That's true.
Thank you guys.
There's going to be a tutorial for this?
There is going to be a tutorial for this. Are you keen on learning it?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
That's what we like to hear. It's the best kind of reaction. Hey, what's up guys? It's DK Magician here, and welcome back to another OPC magic tutorial. Last year around this time, I put out a video about how you could use a one-way deck as a method for locating a card. And while this method can be practical, it does have its downsides. The main one being that not every deck is a one-way deck. But that's why today we're going to be talking about a little something called the one-way pointer card principle, which will allow you to do the exact same thing with almost any deck of cards. So, without further ado, let's get right into the tutorial. While you might not know it by name, the one-way pointer card principle has been around for centuries, dating all the way back to the mid-1600s, where it was first described in French publication La Maison academique. God, I butchered that pronunciation. Please don't come after me if you're French. I'm so sorry. However, it wasn't until the mid-19th century when this principle became more widely used in reference. One example can be found in the effect Heads and Tails in the Magician's Own book, which was published in 1857. It can also be seen here in the Boston newspaper Flag of Our Union, published in 1866. So now that we've discussed a little bit of the history, let's take a look at the method behind the one-way pointer card principle. Much like the one-way deck principle, the one-way pointer card principle relies on asymmetry. But rather than looking at the backs of the cards, we're going to be taking a look at the faces. In a standard pack of 52 cards, 22 of those cards are asymmetrical. I've gone ahead and removed those 22 cards here, so if you want to pause the video and take these cards out of your own deck, feel free to do so now. Once you have all these cards removed, what you need to do is make sure they're oriented the same way. In my case, I've made sure that the center pip of each card is facing upwards. Once all your cards are oriented the same way, this works exactly like a one-way deck. If you have a card selected, and then return to the pack in the opposite orientation of the rest of the cards, you can have the deck shuffled as much as you like, but you'll be able to tell which card was removed simply based off its orientation. So now that we understand the basic principle, let's move into the actual performance handling. There are a couple different ways that you can use the one-way pointer card principle in performance, but I'm going to be showing you what I think is the easiest one. I start with the deck set up so that all the pointer cards are facing the same direction on the bottom of the deck. I also insert one of the jokers in the center of this packet and one of the jokers at the very top. To begin the performance, I spread through and say that I need to remove the jokers. So I remove the one in the center of the pointer card packet, and then I remove the one from the top. So now in my left hand, I'm holding all the non-pointer cards, and in my right hand, I'm holding all the pointer cards. I hand the non-pointer cards to my spectator and ask them to shuffle while I shuffle these. And while they're shuffling, I take note of how they shuffle. If they are an experienced magician, chances are that they'll either give them a riffle shuffle or an overhand shuffle, which, if done properly, won't disturb the orientation of the cards. However, if they're relatively inexperienced and maybe they're dropping cards on the table and I notice that the orientation of these cards is getting changed, then I won't hand them the pointer cards packet because I need them to all stay in their correct orientation. So, best case scenario, they get to shuffle both packets of cards. So they shuffle up the pointer cards while I'm shuffling up the non-pointer cards. And then I have them select a card from the pointer card packet. And as they're doing that, I take note of the orientation in which they take it out. And then I flip my packet around so that when they insert it back into the pack, I know that it's the only one facing the opposite direction. Then I shuffle these two packets together. And once again, if they're an experienced magician, I'll allow them to shuffle this whole packet up because I know that they won't change the orientation of the cards. Then I explain to them that I'm going to try and discern which card they picked out, and I'll start by taking out and up-jogging a few cards. The first one I up-jog will always be one of the pointer cards. Now, it's possible that this is the selection, but more than likely, it's not. So I'll take note of the orientation of this card. In this case, the pips are pointing down. Then I'll keep spreading through. I'll find another one to confirm my suspicion that the rest of the cards are facing down. And then I'll go through, I'll maybe pretend to have a few other guesses. Usually I'll pick out other pointer cards. And I'll up-jog them like this. I'll say, I'm trying to get a read on you. And I'll just look through until I find the one that's facing upwards, which hopefully we should happen upon here any moment now. In this case, it's the 5 of spades. So once I have all these up-jog, I'll maybe pretend to ask them a question. Was it a blue card? I think it was a blue card. And then I'll square in the cards that I know were not it. And then I'll rotate this one out so it's facing the same way as the rest of the pointer cards. And then I'll show them the card, reveal the selection. And that way, the reason that I do that is so that I can reset the trick pretty easily just by finding the 22 cards that I know are pointer cards, moving them to the bottom of the deck, and restarting the trick if I want to perform for somebody else. So that's the most basic handling of the one-way pointer card principle that I do in person. Now let's take a look at how you can do this trick virtually. Performing this effect virtually does present its own set of challenges, but hopefully this basic presentation gives you a good jumping off point so that you can create your own routines and incorporate this into your own virtual performances. So, I like to start with the pointer cards about 10 cards down from the top in the deck, and then running through a bank of 22 pointer cards all the way to the bottom when there are no more pointer cards left. This allows me to spread through the cards and say, now I'm going to run through the cards like this, and whenever you see a card that calls out to you, go ahead and say stop. And that way, by the time they're ready to say stop, I've already reached the bank of 22 cards. Now, obviously, it's possible that they could go through all 22 cards and select one that isn't a pointer card, but it's unlikely they'll want to wait that long. 22 cards is a pretty big bank for you to hit. So I turn my head and I say, I'm going to run through the cards, and whenever you see one that you like, just go ahead and say stop. So I'm already in my bank of pointer cards, and whenever they say stop, I up-jog the card that they stopped me at. I then turn the card out of the deck like this, and usually I'll move it closer to the camera, say, I want to get a good shot of this, some kind of excuse for taking the card out of the deck. It works really well in a virtual performance. So I'm going to move this closer so the camera gets a good shot of it. Good. Then I just place it back in the deck, so now it's facing the opposite direction of all the other pointer cards. And I can give the deck a very fair and free shuffle. And then I'll be able to immediately locate which card they've selected, just like in the in-person performance. So I'll give these a mix. I actually couldn't see what card I selected in the monitor because the light was so bright. It might have been overexposed. Maybe you didn't even see which one it was. So I'll go ahead and, again, just like in the in-person performance, I'll up-jog a few cards, particularly pointer cards, so I can see which way the indices are facing, and I'll say, well, maybe it was this one, could have been this one, and it could have been this one. So in this case, I saw that the ace of hearts was facing the opposite direction from the original card that I stuck out, which was the seven of hearts. So I know that they selected the ace of hearts. Now, if you watch the performance at the beginning of the video, you're probably wondering how I was able to discern some of the cards that weren't pointer cards. And we're actually going to get into that right now. If you've been using playing cards for a while, you might notice that sometimes the registration or the centering of the design isn't always perfect. But we can take these little imperfections and use them to our advantage by turning every single card in the deck into a one-way pointer card. So in the case of this deck, I noticed that the margins on one side of the face are thinner than on the other. So I oriented every single card so that the thin margin was on one side and the thick margin was on the other. I'll try and get a close-up of this so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. So if we have all these cards oriented in the same way, every single card in the deck becomes a one-way pointer card. This means we no longer have to rely on hitting our bank of 22 cards, albeit a huge bank that is. We now have the opportunity for the spectator to select literally any card in the deck. This also frees me up to shuffle the whole deck if I'm doing a virtual performance, or even have the spectator shuffle the whole deck if it's an in-person performance. Then it pretty much goes the exact same way. I spread through the cards, have them select one from the center, and when I remove it, I reverse it. And again, right now, I'm not looking at the camera, so I have no idea what card this is. I'll shuffle it into the deck, and we'll see if I can actually find it in real time. Now, this lends itself to the performance that I did over Zoom, because you'll notice that in the beginning, there were a couple people that picked cards, I believe it was the 10 of diamonds, that were not one-way pointer cards. So one way that I try and figure out which direction the cards are facing is by taking a look at the bottom card and then fanning them out. Because if it's on the thin side of the margin, I'll be able to see the faces of most of the cards. And then sometimes I can even pick out which card has the thick side of the margin facing out. In this case, I think I see it. So I'll spread through to it. I believe it's the King of Clubs here. And yes, it actually is the King of Clubs. So this really allows you to have a lot more freedom with the one-way pointer card principle. So if you ever get a deck of bikes, or any deck for that matter, printed by the United States Playing Card Company, and the margins aren't exactly right, realize that this is actually a huge advantage for you and not something to be so upset about, you know? It's not like the United States Playing Card Company is going to fix it anytime soon. I mean, I've been doing Magic for 10 years, and they haven't. So take those little imperfections and use them to your advantage. Now, you might still have some questions about the Zoom performances that I did, particularly that it looked like maybe I didn't even have them select a card from the deck. How did I read their minds? Well, we'll actually talk about that briefly in this next part of the tutorial. So this tip that I'm about to share with you isn't specifically related to this tutorial, but it is something that I use when recording the performances for it. So I wanted to share it with you, and I buried it at the end of the tutorial because I'm hoping that a lot of people will have clicked away by now, and that this can just be, you know, between us few dedicated ones that watch all the way to the end. So I'm going to go ahead and actually pull up a performance here on screen. Now, of course, the first thing you're going to notice is that there's a huge chunk of time here at the beginning of the performance that I did not include at the very beginning of the tutorial. One, for time reasons, and also because it makes the effect seem a lot stronger when you post the video online. And that's basically what I'm going to be talking about here, is how we can make our virtual performances more impactful when we post, you know, recordings of them. So what I had to do here was have the cards selected, obviously reversed, and then placed back into the deck so that I could use the one-way pointer card principle in order to discern the cards. But right after I did this portion of the effect, I phrased my words very specifically. What I would do is I would say the names of the participants, and then I would say, before we move on, can you guys just confirm that we didn't set anything up before we started recording this call, right?
Yeah, nothing.
I didn't ask you guys to pick specific cards or write anything down or do anything fishy like that?
No.
Okay. But when I cut out the beginning part of the performance later on, and we start with that phrase, people watching the recording of the performance are going to think, oh, he must have just started recording before he said that. they take that as the beginning of the performance rather than being somewhere in the middle. Now, obviously, the people who participated will know that this is a bit of a discrepancy, but this is a kind of technique that's used on television shows all the time, even in stage shows as well. So from this point on, I tell the person to think of a card, but obviously the card they're thinking of is the one that they have just selected previously. So to the audience watching at home, they're just thinking of a completely random card. But both me and the spectator know that they're thinking of a very specific card, one that they had selected earlier on in the performance. So hopefully this little tip helps your virtual performances translate even better when you post the recordings of them online. So that is the one-way pointer card principle. I really hope that you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, make sure to leave a like as well as a comment down below. If you want to see more magic tutorials like this and upcoming deck trailers, make sure to subscribe here at Organic Playing Cards. If you want to follow us on Instagram, you can do so at organic_playing_cards, and if you want to follow me, you can find me at DK Magician. Well, that's all I have for you guys today, so until next time, I'm DK Magician, spread the love, and peace out.